Hello!
Hello AOS fans!
It's the Agents of Embergard.
And in this video we're going to give you an overview of
Blazing Assault.
Blazing Assault, designated by Games Workshop as a strike rivals deck, which means it's good for hitting things. It's one of the ones from the core box, and it's probably the simplest to get your head around.
We think overall it's a really good deck for starters.
We are going to do a quick overview of this as a rivals deck, but we're going to be mostly focusing on how the deck plays in the Nemesis format.
So first thing we're going to look at are the objectives.
I'm actually going to start with a negative, because the elephant in the room is Annihilation.
Terrible card.
It's a 5 glory end phase card, which is pretty much, if you score it, you're probably winning anyway. Not necessarily, but probably winning anyway, because you've annihilated, destroyed every single fighter in your opponent's warband. Each of these warbands is designed to give up exactly the same amount of glory when you score it. So if you don't score it, that's 5 out of your 16 glory gone. Which is like a third of your glory, pretty much gone. All of the other cards are 1 glory. So that means you've kind of got to score them all. Now, it has got some very easy scores. 6
of them obviously are surges, because all surges are 1 glory, which means the other 5 are all end phase cards. 1 glory end phase cards aren't great. You really want to be looking at 2 glory more often, but they are quite easy to score, so you generally don't have to try too hard to score them.
Yeah, because you want to be elevating your glory probably in Nemesis format up to sort of 17, 18 if you can. And the only problem with having very small glory cards in your deck is that when you're trying to put on your upgrades, especially some of the really good upgrades, they're 2 glory, which means you've got to score 2 cards before you can even think about putting some of the really good cards onto your deck. So it's kind of far from ideal that these are all only 1 glory. Like I say, there are some really easy to score ones. There's things like Get Stuck In, which means you could literally just make an attack in your opponent's half, which, unless it comes out right in the end of the game and your opponent is like back, somehow managed to get into your backfield, is really easy to score.
Yeah, that's a very, very obvious card to take, I think, in nearly any aggro deck. A lot of the cards in this, especially the surges, are quite dice dependent. So you've got things like critical effort, which means you need to roll a crit, so you've got a 1 in 6 chance of doing that.
Probably you're going to score that, because you do normally roll a crit. Well, most people do.
Most people. I don't. I'm quite bitter that I did lose a game at the Worlds event, because I rolled about 16 dice in a round and I didn't roll 1 crit during that time.
That's pretty harsh. Branching Fate is a card that is sometimes used and sometimes not in the Nemesis format. It really depends on what warband you're pairing the deck with, because if you haven't got very many 3 dice attacks, it's not worth taking it. Yeah,
it does have the benefit that it uses the underdog mechanic, so if you are the underdog, you only have to roll 2 dice and make them different, which is much easier to accomplish, but you do already have to be on the back foot for that to happen.
You do, and I find with the Blazing Assault deck, it tends to fire very quickly out of the blocks, because you score your surges quite fast, and so therefore you're already not the underdog, so you kind of really can't rely on scoring Branching Fate via the underdog method.
It also has things like Perfect Strike, where you have to roll all successes on your attack, and Strong Start, where you have to kill one of your opponent's fighters before he kills any of yours to score.
Yeah, I really don't like that one, because you literally can lose the roll off and not be able to score that if things go badly for you. Perfect Strike is one of those cards that I tend to think, oh, I don't really want that, but I've played into it quite a lot and found my opponent scoring it. You roll more successes more often than you think you do. The attack itself doesn't actually have to be successful.
No.
So it has definitely got some utility. There's a few warbands that just have like a single dice attack when you get started. So it's like straight away I'll miss, but I'll roll a hammer. So up yours.
I've scored it. A couple of other end phase cards that are quite solid, but they're only 1 glory. Things like Keep Chopping, which means you have to make 3 attacks. Pretty easy to do.
I don't think I've ever not scored Keep Chopping. Even if you draw into it later in the round, you've pretty much always been attacking. The only time you won't score it is if something really bad's happened and you haven't got any fighters left at the end, or something really good happened and you've destroyed your opponent already and you can't attack, which actually can be a problem again for this deck because it's low scoring. If you are very, very successful and you've killed everything and you haven't run Annihilation, you're in trouble, but you can't rely on scoring Annihilation, so it shouldn't be in there anyway.
You've also got things like Fields of Blood, which is 4 or more fighters have damage or are dead. That's almost a guaranteed, as long as it's not the first round, so you've got time to spread some damage around, but that's pretty much always going to be scored.
More shady cards, or less good cards, I suppose. You've got Denial, which you have to have no fighters in your territory. It's a bit kind of potluck whether you actually score that one. I mean, you just can't allow for it. You never quite know where your enemy fighters are going to end up.
Yeah.
So I don't really like that one.
You've also got On the Edge, which is having enemy fighters that are vulnerable, but generally you don't want to leave people vulnerable. You just want to kill them. So
no, you can score that incidentally, maybe. You don't want to be relying on it. You don't want to be not killing somebody just so you can score it. You've got Go All Out. Score this in end phase if 5 or more fighters have move and or charge tokens, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible. But it's out of your control, really, because you can't charge with 5 fighters. So you're
without cheating.
On your own. So then your opponent's probably going to move.
Yeah.
But if it comes out late game, you can't score it.
Yeah, too many people are dead or anything like that.
Comes out early game and your opponent is not playing what you want them to play, then you can't score it. So I don't like that.
It's not a great one. It's only 1 glory gain. And the last one is Strike the Head, which is a surge card, but you either have to kill your opponent's leader or you have to kill someone that has a higher wound characteristic than your fighter, which that's a bit easier. But again, you get that first round, you've got to start chiseling away at somebody bigger than you before you can take them out. So it's not an easy score.
I think it moves you into suboptimal plays.
Yeah.
And then it can prick your hand if you don't get the kill when you want it. And it's a bit like a strong start. If you don't score it when you want to score it, then suddenly it's stuck and do I throw it away, do I keep it? That's it really. I mean, advice for rivals: if you draw Annihilation at the beginning, and mulligan immediately and hope you don't draw back into it too early.
Yeah, or potentially if you've got a couple of surges in your hand, just keep them and then discard Annihilation at the end of the round.
Well, yeah, that quite possibly, yeah. But it always feels painful discarding it. But
it does.
Other than that, I think just go for it.
Yeah, just smash your opponent to pieces.
Regarding pairings for Nemesis format, I mean, it goes well with most things. If you've got a strong aggro warband, then it goes well. It goes pretty well with Emberstone Sentinels. Hit things and stand on objectives. It goes very well, like most things do, with Countdown to Cataclysm. I'm not sure how well it would go with Pillage and Plunder. I haven't really seen that. I mean,
it's very similar to Emberstone Sentinels because you're just going to run onto an objective, hit someone, and then flip the objective. So it's kind of the same setup.
Yeah, it probably is. We're going to go on to the power suite. It's the power suite where this deck really shines.
So we're talking about the power cards next, and I think it's safe to say that if you're playing in Nemesis format, when you come to picking the cards you want, you're going to have at least 8 of them from this.
I think so. So at least 8 of the ploys. I think the only 2 you might not take is Scream of Anger, because that involves damaging a fighter, which I really don't like doing. No. And Wings of War, because actually mobility in this game isn't quite so...
Not quite so troublesome.
Yeah, because the board's a bit more compact. It does have its uses, +2 movies never to be sneezed at, but there are other options better elsewhere. But the rest of the cards are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the only other card I don't generally take very often is Illusory Fighter, mostly because I'm concentrating on just getting across the board and I don't really care about coming back again. But saying that, it is useful if your opponent starts running past you into your own half to jump someone back ready to club them on the head.
Yeah, or if you've charged in with a key attack and missed, and then you can just teleport them back again and get them out of danger. I think Illusory Fighter is an excellent card. I actually slightly disagree with Pete there. I think I would always take Illusory Fighter. Commanding Stride is great because it enables your leader to get quite far across the board without actually having to use a move action or a charge action. Sidestep, obviously brilliant. Healing Potion has actually really come into its own in this version of the game.
Everyone has Healing Potion these days.
Everybody has Healing Potion, and it's going to be even more important with Edge of the Knife, I think, because you can just deny that last little the everybody tempered card with a sneaky Healing Potion right at the end of the round. Lure of Battle is one of my favourite cards in the entire game, not because it's particularly strong, although it is strong, but just because it's just a really nice little mechanic. You pick one friendly fighter that is within 2 hexes of another fighter and push the other fighter 1 hex closer to the friendly fighter. It's got all sorts of little shenanigans you can do with it.
It's great for putting people off of objectives if they run onto it, or it's good for pushing your fighters towards other fighters if they're a little bit out of the way and you want to get them back into base space with someone to then club them in the head. It's just loads of options.
There's
there,
all
really.
Sorts of sneaky things you can do with it. So it's got a load of really, really strong ploys, and I think you probably take 7 or 8. I occasionally don't take Shields Up, which gives people a guard token, but it depends on what pairing you're doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was playing Morgox with this, Shields Up was a guarantee for me because there's an objective in one of the other decks when you're playing Nemesis, which is you have a fighter that has a charge token and a guard token in enemy territory. Charge, slap that on, that's a surge, thank you very much.
So looking at the upgrades, it has 7 cards, which I think you're quite hard to justify not putting in your deck.
It's quicker to go through the ones that we are less interested or we think are less good, and one of those is Tough, which is no more than 3 damage can be inflicted on this fighter in the same turn. For most warbands, that's just trash. Yeah,
I quite like that when it first came out, and then I used it a couple of times and realised I never ever played it. Because it's one of those cards, it sounds better than it is.
Or most of the time, people only take at most 3 damage. The damage output in most warbands doesn't go into 4 very often.
No, I think I got unused to the fact that you could, because in the old game you could stack up damage.
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
can't do it. The only time it will be useful, I've realised, is when those pesky Emberwatch try and snipe you with their little snipey bird.
Yes, because it is in the whole 10, so that does include the power step as well. So you're not going to get people go in, club you with 3 damage, and then ping you with another one to take your 4 wound fighter out. However, maxing out on 3 damage on a 4 wound fighter or 5 wound fighter, not spectacular, to be honest.
No, it's not. It's not ideal. The other ones, Brawler does make it into some of my decks, but that cannot be fighter cannot be flanked or surrounded.
Yep.
It's much better in certain matchups than others.
Yep.
And Deadly Aim, I don't think gives you a fighter in snare, which can be clutch, but at the same time, it can also just be wasted.
And then snares like, oh, I've reduced your chance to
Yeah.
save by 1/6. It's not quite as spectacular as other cards say sharpen points, which it has cleave.
Yeah, that's absolutely excellent card. And then you've also got, it does kind of go against sharpen points a little bit, but you've got great strength.
Yep.
It gives you Grievous, so it's going to be essentially +1 damage. You've got Keen Eye and Accurate,
Yep.
which make fighters scarily keen-eyed and accurate. You've got Duelist, which enables you to push a fighter after you've attacked with them.
That is really fantastic for when you've got a fighter. You don't want to charge, you just want to make some attacks without moving too much, and it just helps shove your fighter around the board,
Yeah.
enable you to just maybe get more attacks off without having to waste a charge on them.
Particularly handy for ranged fighters.
Yes.
You can just shoot and move, shoot and move.
Yeah.
And you've got Hidden Aid, which is really useful because it makes adjacent fighters flanked, which just makes your attacks just that little bit more accurate.
It's great if you've got a really elite warband where you're not really guaranteed to have enough fighters around to be able to flank your opponent. That just means you're increasing your chances to hit just by 1/6 straight away, which is
Yeah.
always nice.
And you've got Great Fortitude, which obviously is great. And fortitudinous.
You can't quite see it, but we have got up, I think, 7 of them in this one, and I think it was probably about 7 or 8 of the previous one,
Yeah.
where we just said they're all great, and they are. It's all fantastic. The only real downside to this deck is the objectives.
So if you're looking at a Nemesis choice and you want to pick Blazing Assault, you probably want to pick it with another deck which gives a much higher objective glory total. So something like Cannon and Cataclysm is perfect, Emberstone Sentinels is pretty good, and Pillage and Plunder as well.
Overall, with this deck, you're going to be charging across the board and smashing your opponent in the face with them.
It's not subtle, but it's effective.
So let us know what your favourite cards are in this deck. Do you think that we've completely missed a hidden gem in there, or do you think we've overrated some of the cards a bit too much?
Absolutely, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click that like button
And click the subscribe button.
and ring that bell if you want notifications of further videos.
Do let us know if you find these videos helpful. We'll obviously going to be doing more of them. If you'd like us to focus on specific aspects of the game other than the rivals decks or warbands, do let us know. So we'll see you soon, probably in the Embergard. Bye!